Hi everyone, this is Rhoda for another report on our subject on Dev 206, Production of Print and Radio Development Communication Materials. We are now on Module 14, where we will be discussing about interviewing for radio. For my particular topic, I will be discussing all about the reminders for conducting a radio interview. And before we proceed, let's take a look back into what has already been covered in the module so far. We have also discussed about what the radio interview is or what it entails. Second, the types of broadcast interview, and also the planning for the interview. Right now, we will go into the reminders for conducting a radio interview. These are just some things that we may need not to forget when we are already interviewing someone for our radio program. So, what are these things that we need to always remember? There are aspects of it that we are going to focus on in this report, and we will start with our approach in the conduct of the interview. Now, about the approach, an interview aims to draw out information, ideas, or emotion from an expert, a personality, or a regular person. It is expected to be a spontaneous event. Now, it is important that we always remember that an interview is not equal to a discussion. Rather, the interviewer must ask the questions and, most importantly, not to argue, to agree, or to disagree on anything that may be divulged by our interviewee. And therefore, with that system in place, there are three parties to the interview. That includes the interviewer, which is the one who will be asking the questions, the interviewee, as the one who will be answering those questions, and lastly, the listeners, which are the most important of the three parties in this system. So it's important that we emphasize the spontaneity of an interview, where it must not appear rehearsed or scripted at all. This is, of course, for the benefit of the audiences to be able to connect better with the people speaking in this interview. The second thing that we need to always remember in conducting our interviews is some virtues on how to create a good interview. So, what are these virtues that are expected to be followed? There are nine of them enlisted here. The first one is that the purpose must be clear. Now, the interviewer must have an aim in the interview, and this aim must be clear in the creation of the questions that they are going to ask. Therefore, in asking these questions in the interview, um, a purpose can be seen now that they are approaching such purpose within the interview. Second, there is preparation and research, no matter how short the time allowed. By preparation, we mean the materials are already prepared, be it the microphone, batteries, the venue, the set, the interviewee, the actual person that we are going to ask. Now, these are all prepared, and also the information that we are going to cover in the topic that we are going to cover in the interview that we're going to conduct. Enough research must have already been done. No, kumbaga, we did not come into the interview empty-handed. Third one, questions are focused on the objectives. Therefore, it's important they are direct and short questions. They are simple and easily understandable, and most importantly, stimulating. Now, this means that the questions that we are asking must be oriented towards the purpose that we are aiming to reach in this interview. The fourth one, this is to help the discussion develops logically from beginning to end. Now, this is to help audiences easily follow the flow of the conversations where topics do not jump around. The fifth one, the audience is involved. Now, this means that the topic is relevant to our listeners. Of course, we do not want to talk about something that our listeners cannot relate to. So, questions are poised to address what people would want to know about that specific topic. Number six, the interviewer conducts the interview impartially. Now, as in connection to the reminders with regards to our approach, our interviewer is merely there to ask the questions. Therefore, they must remain impartial in giving such questions. Interviewers must not make judgments or express personal opinions of their own, as they are there to um, simply facilitate the interview, because the information must come primarily from the interviewee and not from the one who is asking the questions. For number seven, the interviewer controls the pace, topic development, duration, and the mood of the interview. Now, this means that the interviewer is the captain of this boat. The whole outcome of the interview lies on their hands and not on the interviewee. Number eight, the interview sounds spontaneous and conversational. It does not sound forced, rehearsed, most importantly, inauthentic. The more natural it flows, the more people would be drawn to listen to it. Number nine, and lastly, the interview is interesting and must sound so. You want to hold the audience's interest from beginning to end. Therefore, in order to do that, we must keep the conversation interesting, the questions stimulating, and the whole flow of the conversation have to be very um, accessible to everyone who is listening to it. So, those are nine virtues that we have to always remember in order for us to make a good interview. In addition to that, we also have some reminders with regards to personal presentation in doing our interviews, because how you look and conduct yourself can make or break the radio station. Your clothes, your manners, your body language, your demeanor will greatly affect the whole interview. Now, how so? Your clothes and your manners will introduce you to the interviewee, and their impression of you will greatly affect the whole interview. So, of course, we must make our person presentable so that we may create a good impression on our interviewee, as we know that first impressions do make an impact in the whole outcome of the interview. Also, this includes your body language, how you present yourself, how to conduct yourself, how you sit, how you place your hands or you cross your legs. This will be telling of how you feel, and this includes your tone of voice and demeanor. No matter the topic, we must ensure to always be friendly. We do not want to sound hostile or judgmental or inauthentic in our interviews, because you want to build rapport with your interviewee in order to acquire the best answers to your questions. Now, we all know from personal experience that the most authentic answers are almost always drawn from a good relationship that you have with the person you are conversing with. So, in an interview, that is something that we want to ensure among our interviewees. And next, onto the pre interview chat. Now, short conversation before the interview will help establish the rapport between you and the participants. Here, you must sound out the course you you propose for the interview. Now, it must also be emphasized that a good greeting, a firm handshake, good eye contact makes for good rapport as well. And this is what the pre interview is also for. You set the tone for the whole interview. If the interview is nervous, this is the time to calm them down. In the pre interview chat, this is when we want to make clear what the purpose of your interview is all about, and somehow to not parang jump into things um, immediately. Now, just to warm up the conversation a little bit before we start the actual interview in our radio program. And lastly, one thing we must address when conducting an interview is on the topic of rehearsing. It is important that we avoid rehearsing um, the interview in general, because if necessary, um, if you want to somehow prepare your interview, you may discuss the questions that you are about to ask to your interviewee, but We must avoid rehearsing the questions and the answers to that question, because you may, but it must never sound rehearsed or scripted, because it loses the authenticity that we want the audiences to attain in receiving your information. Again, following the virtues that we have discussed earlier. We want it to not sound scripted. We want it to really be authentic, as it is what will make your interview a good interview. So, to wrap it all up, for us to open a discussion on the comment section of this discussion forum, here are some questions that I want to ask all of you. Because number one, the nerves, no, is a very natural thing for us to have, whether you are the interviewer or the interviewee in this situation. So maybe what are tips that you can give in alleviating nerves in both the interviewer and the interviewee? So maybe we can gather some tips, especially among those who have been doing this for a long time in their career. So we can never be short on new lessons here in this discussion forum. And second, since we have discussed what we must do in a good interview, what then are the things that we must not do in an interview, especially those not covered in this report that I have done? So I'm looking forward to you can share about these questions in the comment sections of this discussion forum. So I will see you all virtually in this discussion forum. Thank you so much, and I hope you learned something.